They tried to derail my career without realizing I was the one who'd been signing their paychecks all along. Hang around because what started as pure betrayal turned into the kind of power play you only see in movies. And if stories about silent revenge and relentless triumph hit home for you, go ahead and tap that subscribe button. Money may not buy peace, but trust me, it can buy a kind of revenge so quiet, so complete, that it turns silence into poetry. I found that out 3 weeks ago when my own family made a move against me, completely unaware they were targeting the CEO of their own employer. I'm Harper Quinn. To most of the tech and energy world, I go by Quinn. It's intentional, vague, neutral, forgettable on paper. Technically, I serve as the Chief Innovation Officer at Clearwave Dynamics, a climate solutions firm based in Austin, Texas. But what my family didn't know, what no one in my personal life suspected, is that I quietly became Clearwave's majority owner this past spring. It was all through a sophisticated investment framework I'd been building since my early 20s, layered trusts, shell companies, offshore holdings. The kind of structure you only hear about in billionaire podcasts. It started 16 years ago. I was the first in my family to attend college, a scholarship kid at NYU double majoring in environmental science and computer engineering. My dorm room was barely big enough to stretch out in, but that didn't stop me from coding through the night refining early prototypes for software that could model climate impact scenarios. Meanwhile, my older sister Jessica Jess, to everyone else, had dropped out of business school for the second time and was deep into yet another MLM hustle. This time, it was luxury wellness supplements. She's just trying to find her path, my dad Richard would say with a shrug. You've always been the stable one. Stable didn't mean supported. I juggled waiting tables, pulling double shifts on weekends, and pitching my software concepts at grimy underground tech meetups no one respectable showed up to. Jess. She was off in Costa Rica on a soul alignment retreat for 6 weeks, finding her purpose on the beach. I never judged her, not out loud, but I stayed focused eyes on the long game. I always knew where I was going. I just never said it out loud. By 32, I had launched and sold 3 green tech companies, each structured under a different LLC. Each exit had been strategically obscured, earnings filtered through discrete trusts, profits quietly reinvested my name, kept out of public filings. I built Clearwave in the shadows. No press, no spotlight, just product and progress. Why all the secrecy? Because my family never truly believed in me. They believed in Polish, in titles, in the illusion of success. They called my work quirky and reposted Jess's every career pivot as if she were Silicon Valley royalty. She once got a shout out for being regional lead of a SaaS sales team, and my parents practically threw a brunch. So I let them think I was barely scraping by. Let them believe I needed their support, their advice. That illusion didn't last much longer. At the same time, I was pulling off the ultimate move, a stealth acquisition of Clearwave Dynamics. I had joined the company just over a year earlier in a mid-level strategic role. The company was wildly undervalued but filled with potential. Over 14 months, I orchestrated a silent buyout through Evergreen Capital Group, the umbrella trust I controlled anonymously. Blind trusts, offshore entities, cross-border holdings, it was all in place. Not a single document bore my legal name. So when the board offered me the role of Chief Innovation Officer, they believed they were elevating a loyal, forward-thinking employee. They had no clue they were installing the company's new majority owner into the executive suite. Jess's reaction. Honestly, it was delicious. Wow, must be nice to land a lucky break, she said at a family dinner, her smirk barely hidden. Just don't let it go to your head. Running a company isn't like making science projects on your laptop. Dad gave me a polite, strained smile. My mom, Margaret, chimed in without missing a beat. Maybe Jess can give you a few tips. She's managed sales teams at 3 different firms now. I just sipped my tea and smiled. I'll definitely take that into consideration, I said smoothly. What they didn't know was that the acquisition agreement, the document confirming my full control, was already locked in a titanium safe back at my apartment. But Jess couldn't stand the idea of being overshadowed. She had always been the golden child, charismatic, extroverted, the one with the LinkedIn perfect life. I was the bookish one. The girl with too many degrees and not enough visibility. First, she started showing up at Clearwave for casual lunches, laughing with department heads and pretending to support me. Then, anonymous HR reports started rolling in. Allegations of fake academic records, missing coursework, and questionable qualifications. all of it completely fabricated. When I confronted her, Jess just smiled and said sweetly, "I'm only looking out for you, Harper. You know how these diversity hires can go. Companies love promoting women fast. It's all about optics. I'd hate for you to crack under pressure." I let her talk, intrigued by how far she'd go. I didn't have to wonder long. Just yesterday, she delivered a glossy folder to the board. Inside, forged emails, fake spreadsheets, doctored timelines, even bogus allegations of embezzlement and insider trading. An emergency board meeting was called for Monday. Apparently, Jess had caught wind of it through office gossip. At dinner that night, she was practically levitating. "The board asked me to come in," she said with a gleam in her eye. "Something big's going down. Could be a major shakeup at the top." Mom clapped like she was watching a live awards show. Dad raised his wine glass. No one thought to ask why I hadn't been invited to this mysterious meeting about my own job. What they didn't realize, I'd spent that entire night compiling my own file, a thick dossier of every back-channel whisper, every lie, every manipulative stunt Jess had pulled. But this time I was including something even bigger, the complete ownership breakdown of Clearwave Dynamics. Tomorrow they would find out exactly who they were messing with. If you believe Jessica Quinn was about to walk away unscathed, untouched by the fallout of her own schemes, you haven't heard the full story yet. And you'd be wise to keep listening, because everything that happened next didn't just flip the script, it burned the entire narrative to ash. I should have been gutted, rattled, broken in some raw, familial way by the knowledge that my own sister had not only doubted my worth, but had meticulously orchestrated an attempt to dismantle my career. And my parents, as always, they stood transfixed by Jess's charm, blind to the trail of manipulation she dragged behind her like a tattered veil. But sitting in my downtown Austin office, back straight against leather, my fingers brushing over the rows of color-coded tabs in the thick folder on my desk, I felt something else entirely. No panic, no heartbreak. What settled over me instead was a precise, almost surgical clarity, the kind that only comes when you've seen this moment coming from 1,000 miles away. The documents spread before me like a chessboard, every forged email, every doctored bank transfer, every screenshot she'd tampered with, every whisper in HR that traced back to her voice. It was all here. Her attempted coup wasn't just a betrayal, it was an opening. A stage I'd never been offered willingly. And now finally the spotlight was mine. No longer the quiet girl in the background. Not today. The board meeting had been set for 900 a.m. sharp, and the irony wasn't lost on me. They believed I'd be the one facing judgment, the one answering for sins I hadn't committed. But they'd made one critical miscalculation. I was the architect of the rules they thought they were using against me. By 7:45 that morning, I was already in the building, a slow smile tugging at the corner of my mouth as I sipped black coffee from a matte ceramic cup. Every puzzle piece was sliding into place exactly as planned. Grace Porter, my assistant, my confidant. My right hand moved through the corridors like a shadow, distributing sealed folders to the directors' offices with a precision that rivaled a military operation. Each envelope contained the truth, and the truth, like revenge, was best served clean, cold, and impossible to ignore. At 8:45 on the dot, Jessica made her grand entrance. Clad in a power suit so sharp it could have sliced tension, she swept through the glass doors of Clearwave Dynamics like she owned the place. Our parents flanked her, Margaret Quinn, in her favorite pearl earrings, Richard with his signature blazer that screamed respectability. Jess's smile glittered with victory, her stride radiating confidence, a queen arriving for coronation. "Is the board ready for us?" she asked, the front desk voice syrupy and sure. From my second-floor office, I watched them being escorted toward the executive wing, the directors following, soon after stoic, unreadable. But each of them had already received my midnight message. Each had been briefed. At precisely 9 Uhr, I stood, brushed a hand over my charcoal blazer, and stepped into the hallway. My heels echoed softly against the marble tile like the ticking of a well-set clock. The moment had arrived. If you've ever felt forced to dim your light so others wouldn't feel eclipsed, if you've ever been underestimated for the sake of family peace, then this part is for you. Because the real power move, it wasn't the ownership. It was choosing to reveal it now. Inside the boardroom, Thomas Whitaker, our chair, was mid-sentence. "Apologies for the delay," I said, breezing through the doors and moving with calm precision toward the head of the table, the chair that had always symbolized power, but until now had never truly belonged to me. I took my seat without asking. Jessica's head jerked up. Her smugness evaporated like mist hitting flame. "Harper, this is a closed session," she snapped, voice slicing through the silence. "You weren't invited." I laced my fingers and gave her a smile, soft and unyielding. "Actually, I said I invited myself." "You see, it's rather difficult to conduct a board meeting without the owner of the company present, don't you think?" The room fell still, the kind of silence that rearranges molecules. Jessica's face drained of color. Mom blinked rapidly, her composure slipping. Dad's jaw tightened as if he were holding in a comment he'd regret, or perhaps he already did. "What are you talking about?" Jessica spat, her voice sharpening into a weapon. "Clearwave is owned by shareholders." "It was," I said, gently nodding toward Grace, who stepped forward and placed a sleek leather portfolio onto the table with reverence. "Clearwave Dynamics was publicly traded until 2 months ago. That's when it was quietly acquired by Evergreen Capital Group." I paused. Let the name settle in their minds. "Care to guess who owns that?" Gasps flitted around the room like startled birds. Pages turned, whispers halted. Some of the directors had speculated. Rumors had circulated about the mysterious holding firm behind the buyout. But now, as they flipped through the portfolio's contents, they knew. "This is a joke," Jessica muttered, stumbling over her own certainty. "You couldn't have done this. You're just a coder, the background one. You're not—" I tilted my head. "I've heard that before, and you've said it enough times." I glanced at Grace. "Would you mind?" She tapped her tablet, and suddenly the room filled with Jessica's voice audio clips, calm and cruel. "She's not built for leadership," Jess whispered in one. "She's smart, sure, but she folds under pressure. The board will see it soon enough." Another crackled into life. "Honestly, she's a diversity hire. Let's be real." The temperature dropped like ice through whiskey. No one moved. Then came more. Any irregularities in her department's finances might be worth a deeper look. Each clip was a blade. Each whisper a record of calculated destruction, but none of them were mine. Jessica crumbled in real time. Her posture sank, her confidence unraveling with every word that echoed back at her. "And then there's this," I said, holding up a thick, damning envelope. Her envelope, the one she'd slipped to the board anonymously. "Inside you'll find falsified financials, forged emails, a fictional timeline designed to remove me, character defamation, executive sabotage. All of it meticulously documented. By her." Jessica's voice broke. I was protecting the company. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. You weren't protecting anything I said. You were clawing for control. And you forgot who built the foundation you tried to steal." "You've always been the quiet one," she said bitterly. "You weren't supposed to win." "No," I replied. "I was supposed to earn it, and I did." Mom finally spoke, her voice trembling. "Surely you're not going to ruin your own sister over this." "Like she didn't try to ruin me?" I turned to face her. "Like you didn't show up today hoping to see me fall?" Dad raised a hand, hesitating. "We just came to support Jess?" "No," I cut in, eyes locking with his. "You came to bet on the same daughter you've always chosen, the wrong one." I turned to the board and straightened my shoulders. "I apologize for the dramatics," I said. "But this needed to be shown in full. Miss Jessica Quinn has not only crossed ethical lines, she's put this company's future at risk." Thomas Whitaker cleared his throat, grave and deliberate. "Miss Quinn, what would you have us do?" I sat again, folding my hands with finality. "I have 3 requests." I began, my voice steady, controlled, though I could feel the heat of history pressing against my ribs. "First, that the board dismiss all allegations against me based on the verified evidence we've now reviewed. Second, that disciplinary action be taken immediately against Miss Jessica Quinn for gross misconduct." And finally, I added, locking eyes with Thomas Whitaker. Before continuing, I ask that a formal letter be issued to her current employer, including all relevant documentation, audio recordings, digital forgeries, and a clear account of her efforts to undermine Clearwave's executive leadership. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. The truth had already done its work, slicing through years of assumptions and prejudice like a scalpel through silk. Jessica gasped, and her voice, once dripping with smug confidence, emerged now in a thin, cracking whimper. "You'll destroy my career." The words were not a question, but an accusation, pitiful and desperate. I turned slowly toward her, my voice a quiet blade. "Just as you tried to destroy mine." She flinched. I didn't. "The difference, Jess, is I have the truth undeniable, documented and witnessed. You had forged spreadsheets and desperation dressed as ambition." I let the silence settle once more, each second pressing down like a judgment. And there's one more thing, I said, my tone now colder, resolute. I request that Jessica Quinn, along with our parents, be permanently banned from Clearwave Dynamics property. Any attempt to contact staff or interfere with operations will be met with immediate legal action. The words hung heavy in the air. Harper, no, my mother cried out suddenly, mascara streaking in spider-like trails down her cheeks, her voice cracking like old porcelain. We're family. A bitter, almost inaudible laugh escaped me, not from amusement, but the quiet release of years of held-back ache. I turned to her, not as a daughter, but as the woman they'd never really seen. Family lifts you up when you fall, I said softly but firmly. Family celebrates your victories instead of resenting them. Family doesn't try to erase a lifetime of work just because it makes them feel small. I reached for the final folder and slid it across the gleaming mahogany table. The soft scrape of cardstock against wood sounded louder than any gavel. This, I said, tapping the document, is the acquisition agreement from my first climate tech startup. I sold it for $50 million when I was 27. The second 182 years later. I turned toward my father, his eyes no longer narrowed with judgment, but glazed with disbelief. I could have bought that country club membership you always talked about, paid for every exotic vacation you gave Jess like gold stars. But I didn't. I stayed quiet. I paused, letting the weight of those words sink in. I stayed quiet, I repeated, because I needed to know who stood beside me when they thought I had nothing. I glanced at Jessica, whose confidence had withered into pale, breathless silence. You all failed that test. You're ending my career, she whispered, her voice so faint it barely reached me. No, I replied, standing slowly collecting the thick stack of folders as I did. You ended it the moment you tried to destroy mine. The only difference is I did none of the things I was accused of. But you did them all. I nodded toward Thomas. This meeting is officially adjourned. Please make sure the full record is preserved and secured. I turned without ceremony toward the door. Jessica, Mom, Dad, security will see you out. I'd nearly reached the hallway when I heard her voice behind me, small, broken, and raw. Please, Jessica called out. I was jealous. I couldn't stand that you were finally winning. I don't know why. Her voice cracked. We're still family. Can't we fix this? I turned back just once. Her eyes were glassy pride, gone a soft tremble in her shoulders, betraying the storm inside her. You want to know the difference between us, Jess? I asked gently. When you thought I was struggling, you pushed me down further. When I was thriving, I stayed silent so you wouldn't feel small. I let the words land with the softness of truth and the sharpness of justice. That's the difference between real success and the game you've been playing your whole life. The weeks that followed were telling. Jessica was fired swiftly. Her employer reviewed the evidence recordings, documents every damning detail, and took decisive action. Her name, once passed around in glossy social circles, began to fade. Mine, once whispered quietly in the background, now surfaced in conversations that mattered. My parents left teary voicemails I didn't return. Jessica sent letters handwritten, trembling with remorse. Even her therapist reached out, vouching for her accountability. I archived them all. A part of me wanted to believe in redemption, but belief I had learned demanded proof. 3 months later, just after I wrapped a late strategy session, Grace buzzed into my office. There's someone here, says it's personal. She didn't need to say who. Jessica stepped into my office, but she was unrecognizable. Gone was the polished power suit, the camera-ready smile, the showy accessories. She wore a plain blouse and jeans. Her hair was pulled back. No makeup, no armor. I'm not staying, she said, raising one hand in peace. I just needed to give you something. She walked forward slowly and placed a manila envelope on my desk. It's everything she said. Old passwords, contacts, everything I used when I tried to sabotage you. I'm also sending statements to the board and my old company. No spin, no excuses. I studied her. The quiet in the room wasn't awkward, it was sacred. Like something healing, something honest. Why now, I asked. Because you were right, she said. I wasn't building anything. You were, and I hated you for it. She turned to go, but paused at the door, her voice softer than I'd ever heard it. I'm starting over, she said. New startup, entry level, no fake titles this time. I don't expect anything from you, but letting me fall. It taught me more than all the years Mom and Dad spent holding me up. She reached for the door handle. Jessica, I said gently. She stopped. Send me your resume in a year. She turned, blinking confused. Not for leadership, I added, but if you're serious about earning your place the right way, we're always looking for people willing to start from the ground up. A single tear slid down her cheek. She didn't reply. She simply nodded a quiet, genuine nod and left without a word. 6 months later, clear wave dynamics surpassed even my most ambitious forecasts. We were rolling out next-generation climate solutions, breaking ground in 3 new states, and building a workforce designed to last sustainable, equitable mine. My parents still text occasionally, usually when they want something, or when they're at some function bragging about their visionary daughter, the one they once prayed would find a safe job. I reply politely, distant, but not cruel. The validation I once thought I needed, I've outgrown it. From my corner office, the Austin skyline stretches like a painting. Some nights, I sit by the window, a glass of wine in hand, watching the sun dip below the hills. I think about family legacy and the strange, unexpected power of being overlooked. Last week, I received a holiday card. Just one sentence, no drama, no guilt. You didn't succeed because of us, but in spite of us. I'm finally learning how to build for real. And maybe that's the purest kind of revenge. Not loud, not vicious, just undeniable. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever been the one they underestimated? The one they told to quiet down, to wait your turn, to not aim too high? Have you been the one who worked in silence, endured the wait, and rose not for applause, but because you had no other choice? If you were in my place, what would you have done? Would you have fought back, stayed silent, or simply walked away? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Let this space become more than just a story. Let it be a place where voices once silenced now speak freely. Because if this journey has taught me anything, it's that resilience doesn't need an audience, it needs a reason. And if this story resonated with you, if it reminded you of your own quiet battles, or gave you strength to face tomorrow, I hope you'll consider subscribing. Not just to follow my next chapter, but to stand with every story that deserves to be told. Because in the end, success isn't about proving anyone wrong. It's about finally proving to yourself that you were always right to believe. So what's your story?